Hello everyone, xForts here, and welcome to JoJolion Chapter 65 review, titled The Plant Appraiser, Part 2. So although this is the second part of the Plant Appraiser's arc, I guess, it really isn't. This whole chapter is pretty much just an introduction to his character, and sort of setting up the next arc. Last chapter, if we remember, I know it was so long ago, an entire month, it was pretty much all that flashback with Jobin and his mother Kato, and just the very last panel, the Plant Appraiser showed up, and they were on a bus, so the chapter, of course, there's no skips or anything, we're pretty much in the same exact situation. So getting into this chapter, starting with the cover page, and it says driving with unrest on board. Pretty self-explanatory if you guys know what's happening in the arc right now. So getting on to the first real panel, it's a double page spread of the Plant Appraiser's full body, and the first time I saw this I was like, did this guy go through another redesign? His face is slightly different in his lips, his nose, and also his eyebrows, but I think that's just the way it's shaded, because if you go back, his eyebrows are always shaded and darker, and they're a little bit lighter here, but his face is slightly different, especially his eyes. But throughout this chapter, he's sort of, he sort of grows on you, and you sort of get used to his look. I mean, we've just been seeing him spread out through chapters so much. Every time I see him, I feel like he looks completely different. But, it's not really that big of a deal anymore. And throughout this chapter, I got a good idea of what he looks like now. But I like him a lot. He sort of went through an upgrade from the first time we saw him. Like, he was just like this slender guy. He had his shirt tucked in. Now he's just like ripped bursting out of this plant shirt. It's unbuttoned on the top now, and he just looks way more badass. So, Plant Appraiser design, obviously very much related to his character and what he does, his career. So, I think it's a great design. Also, some of the pea pods changed the direction they were on. He had one big one across the front of him, and now it's sort of moved to the side. But we see more of his design later, which are his shoes. And those are very important. So the last bit of dialogue from the last chapter was pretty much just the Plant Appraiser saying, Josuke, we've been found out, you need to protect me, and pretty much we're on the run now. And he sort of picks up in the same place, giving some background information on what's happening. He says, I heard from Norisuke-san about the new Rokakaka, I know about that. And also, he seems sort of reluctant to be in this situation, because who would want to be in this situation? He seems like it's sort of Josuke's fault. As he said, me and Norisuke may be good friends, but I haven't said I'll work on him with this one yet. So he's sort of reluctant to get involved in this whole situation, and he continues to emphasize that throughout the chapter. Even just the expression on his face, you can tell it's sort of smug, and as he glances behind him, he also sees Yasuo, and he's like, who's this? Because he can tell that she's not just another passenger, she's sort of with Josuke, and Josuke is just like, oh, this is my friend Yasuo, like, and he explains that she's a really good friend, and how she's actually pretty useful. If it wasn't for her, then he would have been defeated by Dolomiti, because, of course, she was the one that saved him from that whole situation, because Josuke kind of lost in that battle. So Plant Appraiser is sort of like, oh really? Okay, he still isn't like 100% on Yasuo here. I really, from the impression he gives off in this chapter, I don't think he likes Josuke or Yasuo really at all, and he sort of resents them for getting him involved in this whole situation, because he knows more about what's happening than they do, and he knows how much more serious it is than Josuke and Yasuo do. So Josuke is sort of picking up on the Plant Appraiser's vibe, how he's questioning Yasuo, and when Josuke even tells him that, oh, she's a friend of mine and she even saved my life, how he doesn't really care. So Josuke's like, alright, I guess he's not comfortable with her being here, or he doesn't want anyone around him at all that he doesn't know based on Norisuke-san's information. So he says, maybe it would be better if we just take Yasuo home or whatever, but that's completely out of the question, as the Plant Appraiser, with that same smug look on his face, like he's mad, he's just like, I think that it might be a little too late for that. So then the Plant Appraiser actually explains why it's too late to go back to Morioh and drop off Yasuo and everything, and he sort of tries, the chapter itself tries to build a lot of tension, sort of setting up this next enemy stand user, and it doesn't really work, as although the Plant Appraiser will shout out statistics like, we have a 95.5% chance of death, or our survival is 7%, it just never feels that way throughout the chapter at all, because there's never anything intense happening. So what he says is that if we were to send her back to Morioh alone, there is a 95.5% chance she would die, but he never really explains how that would happen or why she would die. But then the next thing he says makes a little bit more sense, as those are the probabilities of her dying if she jumps out of a moving bus, which I can believe. So it's apparent that the Plant Appraiser knows a lot more about the current situation and current enemy pursuing them, more so than Josuke and Yasuo, as they originally came after him at his home, so then he reacted by intercepting Josuke and Yasuo and hijacking this bus. So then he reassures them that he actually has a plan and that he's not just running from this enemy mindlessly, and he says that we're just going to go a little bit further until we're a safe distance away from the enemy in a specific location, but for now, keep down all the people in the back now, like, I just want them to shut up and everything, and how he doesn't want to get caught. He says, like, So he says that he broke the onboard cameras earlier, and that must have happened off screen because I have no idea when that happened at all. And also that it'd be a real pain if he got in trouble for a bus hijacking later on. So he wants to pretty much get out of this situation without having to deal with anything later, no repercussions, which I could see why being in trouble for hijacking a bus could be annoying. So, of course, Josuke has a lot of questions for the Plant Appraiser. I mean, this is the person he's been looking for and trying to get to for the past, 6 chapters now. And he just presents himself on this bus and says, hey, Josuke, you're here to protect me. So Josuke obviously would want to ask the man a lot of questions, including the one about the grafted branch. But for now, Josuke sort of just wants to know where they're heading. And the Plant Appraiser explains that we probably shouldn't talk about it. So he doesn't want to say anything because he's just really worried about people listening and getting sort of a step ahead, 2 steps ahead of him now. So he also explains that the whole reason we're in this situation is because people heard you talking. And the dialogue he's talking about there was when Dolomiti forced Josuke to talk using his Blue Hawaii's brain control ability, I guess. So that's the dialogue he was talking about there, where it was listened in on, and then they found out where the Plant Appraiser was. So the Plant Appraiser just kind of wants to keep everything in his head right now and explain things when it's safe. So from all the dialogue from the Plant Appraiser in this chapter, we actually see a pretty good look at his character. He's very much a realist and looks at things from a very logical point of view as he just assesses the current situation, sort of reason trumps emotion in his case, maybe when Josuke, on the other hand, would be more emotion over reason. So he just looks at the situation logically, sees who's just really the most important in their group, and he says, okay, I'm number 1. If the people catch me, the Plant Appraiser, they'll probably force me and maybe even use like Dolomiti's Blue Hawaii to find out where the grafted branch is. So he's number 1 priority. He cannot be caught because he has the ability to tell and give them the information of the grafted branch. So him, priority number 1, can't be caught. Josuke, number 2, because he is the one protecting him. And then number 3, Yasuo doesn't really care. He's just putting everyone that's in their group right now in order. And I kind of like that about him. He even says himself that he's trying to think about this in the most logical way possible and try to avoid a lot of mayhem. And also that Yasuo wasn't forced into this situation. She came here willingly, and now she sort of has to deal with it. And then the Plant Appraiser just says something really weird, which I guess is another look into his character, that he's just really good at reading things. And he just looks at Yasuo and he says, your Banes, did you cut them yourself? And Yasuo is just like, yeah, I guess, just doing that because, yeah, I did. How can you tell? So, whatever. Yasuo and the Plant Appraiser don't really like each other at all, from what I can tell from this chapter. So then in the next panel, we get this beautiful double-page spread of an undisclosed location just outside of Morioh, where the Plant Appraiser planned on going and didn't tell anyone, and it's just in the middle of a parking lot. So once the bus comes to a stop, everyone begins to get off, and the Plant Appraiser starts to shoot out more of his probabilities, and he says, our chances of survival after stepping off this bus are 7.5%. But then once we get off the bus, they really don't seem to be in any immediate danger at all. And of course, he still has that smug look on his face, like, fucking Josuke, you talk to the enemy, you got me in this situation, I shouldn't be here right now. So he definitely does have a lot of resentment for them, just by his facial expressions, you can tell. And he also says that it's to our benefit to get off at a park here in the parking lot rather than on the grass. And we'll see soon once we see what stand, I guess it is. I'm still reluctant on calling it a stand, whatever it is that's pursuing them. And Paisley Park, of course, just continues to show us more and more of its abilities, as he says, people were recording us during this, because that's a new twist on JoJo. I love seeing people with cell phones and everything, because it actually comes into play. These people were recording, oh my god, this bus is hijacked, let me get my phone out and record this. It's nice that Araki actually thought of a very minor detail like that someone probably would do in the real world. And Yasuo just says, Paisley Park, just boom, with a snap of my fingers, just delete all of that data off everyone's phone. And she says that's the kind of ability I've got. And I don't remember Yasuo ever being able to delete any information off a cell phone, but I just think of Paisley Park in general as just a do-anything ability when it comes to technology. I think that's what Paisley Park's just going to be, and we just have to deal with it. It's more of a plot device, if anything, and that's unfortunate to see Paisley Park turn into that when it had a lot of potential to sort of have its set-in-stone rules. But anyways, with Yasuo's ability to delete all the information, she sort of impressed the Plant Appraiser a bit, because he's like, oh, huh, and he doesn't have sort of that mad look on his face. He's sort of impressed now. So maybe his opinion changed on Yasuo a little bit now that she's shown what she's capable of, and he sort of sees her as more of a team player now. So then Yasuo, very much like myself, begins to question the Plant Appraiser's probabilities, and she says, how do you come to those calculations, and what did you see exactly in order to come to that conclusion? And then the Plant Appraiser gives off some dialogue that is very ambiguous, as he seems to know quite a bit about this enemy, but then at the same time, not knowing a lot about them. As he says, the enemy never just shows themselves, do they? And I guess that's just related to anything, or at least any stand battle. And they're just the type to slip in undetected. And Josuke out of nowhere is just like, you're talking about rock humans, right? Like rock humans live with society. They look just like humans, but they're not. But then when we actually see what this enemy is pursuing them, the Plant Appraiser's dialogue makes a bit more sense. And Josuke just continues to talk about rock humans for some reason. Like, the enemy's a rock human. Are they a rock human? Damo didn't have any others. I thought I defeated all the rock humans. And the Plant Appraiser's just like, you got a lot to say, don't you? That smug look on his face. And the Plant Appraiser keeps saying that I shouldn't be in this situation, or just saying, I got dragged into this. You wrote me into this. And he's just like, I don't know anything about Damo. Like, why do you think I know all this? But what the Plant Appraiser says next is very unsettling. He says, I know there is some dark enemy out there, one that slipped into society. As long as the fruits known as the Rokakaka exist, they'll do whatever it takes to get their hands on them. And this can be looked at in a few ways here. Obviously, he could just be generally talking about the main villain of the part, just the way that he said that. I know there's someone dark out there. There's a dark enemy that slipped into society. So, I mean, that's just very menacing sounding, but also it can be looked at it as sort of an organization as a whole. There's a dark enemy out there, this entire organization that sort of slipped into society, that they're just living like regular people. No one knows they exist. Sort of like a higher up Big Brother situation. So he could be talking about one person, but I think in general, he's talking more about the organization that's chasing after them, that is very interested in the Rokakakas and maybe is in charge of pretty much everything with the Rokakakas. Just JoJolion from the beginning has always been a mystery themed part, and now more than ever, that's prevalent. And then he just points at Yasuo, and we get this perfect panel of a first-person view of the Plant Appraiser with his hand pointing at her. And he says, and you'd best not doubt my probabilities, which he made it seem like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. He's an appraiser. He's very good at assessing things and probably assessing situation as well and coming to a mathematical conclusion. But I'm with Yasuo here. I gotta question these probabilities. They don't make any sense. I mean, when they stepped off the bus, they said our probability of survival is 7 or 7.5%. And they've just been standing around talking with no tension at all and nothing, no immediate danger chasing after them. But then finally, the Plant Appraiser sort of moves his focus from Yasuo and moves over this way. That's how I would interpret this panel in motion. And then he points to a tree. And then we get a better look at the tree, and it's rotating around. From this quick panel right here, it looks like it just flip-flopped, but then in the later panels, we see that the tree moving, that's coming towards them, is actually rotating. And then he says again, we've only got a 7.5% chance of survival. We should practice recognizing them. They're pretty fast in their own way too. And it appears now that the enemy chasing after us is a fucking tree. So we went from one chasing arc to the next. Blue Hawaii, pretty cool, but not very well executed, being it's sort of infected zombies. Now it's trees. Trees, yeah. And the way they move is just rotating, so they're constantly spinning, sort of digging their roots in around the ground. And the reason why we need to get to the parking lot is because, of course, trees move a lot slower on asphalt and through concrete, more so than just on soil. But even so, these trees look like they are moving extremely slow. Or there's a certain quirk to them that I noticed later in the chapter. But as of right now, these trees are seriously... Araki did a horrible job at making these things seem intimidating in any way possible, or building any tension at all. Because as of right now, if I was in this situation with them, I really wouldn't care at all, just based on how they're moving and the pace that they're moving at. Although we haven't seen them directly move in soil, which I assume they can move very fast because they were chasing after the plant, or they were chasing after the bus and keeping pace with it. So now that we see that the enemy that's been chasing after us is a tree or multiple trees, it sort of ties back into the dialogue that the Plant Appraiser said earlier, that the enemy never just shows themselves, do they? They're the type to slip in undetected. So it's pretty much confirmed that this enemy is who he was talking about. Of course, he didn't want to flat out say that we're being chased by trees, and I want to get to a parking lot so they won't be able to move as fast, because he didn't know if anyone in the bus or even Yasuo or Josuke was working with these opponents. I mean, can't trust anyone at this point. So, yeah, it's trees chasing after us. So that makes sense, obviously. When Josuke looked behind the bus, he was like, there's no cars or anything, but of course there were trees all over the place. So this enemy is able to slip in undetected and sort of remain hidden within trees. Or again, he could have just been generally talking about this whole organization. So although the trees are moving extremely slow, they do seem to have quite a bit of destructive power, as they're just completely destroying this parking lot and just digging up all of the concrete and asphalt around them. And yeah, that's sort of interesting how it moves not in a straight line, but rather spinning around and sort of destroying everything around it. And we see some of the damage it can do, as there must have been two rats that were just laying on the ground or just underground in like a hole or something. But I feel like it wouldn't be that hard for a rat to avoid this slow moving tree. But the way it does damage is it looks like the roots get struck into it, because it looks like it's filled with holes. Almost like it was shot or something, but of course the top rat has a big chunk missing out of it. So either the way that this stand does damage to things is through its roots digging into the body and just sort of expanding rapidly, or through the rotation itself, like getting sucked into something that's moving at a rapid pace. So say you were to step near the tree that's rotating, your leg would kind of get pulled in, and it would just continue to twist and twist, and your leg would twist with the tree. And as soon as your whole body gets pulled in, you're just getting twisted around underground. So that's really the only way I could see the stand inflicting damage, with its roots or through the rotation itself sucking you in, from what the stand is showing. This very well could not be a stand, but I think it is, from what the stand is showing us right now. As Rohan Kishibe once said, this is just too bizarre to be a stand ability. So then the plant appraiser reveals sort of the information he had about this. He said, that's the person that tried to attack my house. I have no idea who the master is, of course, being stand user. And I like how different characters have different terminology for stands and stuff. Some people refer to it as, like Yasuo just straight up says user. Like when she confronted Dolomiti, she says, I found you, user. And now the terminology that the plant appraiser says is that he calls him master. So I like seeing different terminology from different characters. How, of course, stand users don't often talk about other stand users when they're together. Unless, of course, they're in a battle. So it's established that the trees are moving very slow because they're in the concrete. And then the plant appraiser tries to sort of reassure Josuke that it's not a very weak ability and that it's actually extremely dangerous. And he says, you're giving yourself a death sentence if you step foot on soil. And I can see that, okay? The trees were keeping up to speed with a bus, which I assume was moving above 60 miles per hour. So those are some pretty damn fast trees that are rotating extremely fast as well. So then as the plant appraiser just continues to talk about why he drove here, it's a safe area and it increased our chances of survival, Josuke's just like, hold on, I don't even know who you are. He doesn't even know your name. And I feel like that's how a lot of characters are introduced. They show up out of nowhere and a character will be like, I don't even know who you are. And then boom, we get the name reveal. And it is revealed that the plant appraiser's name is Mamezuku Rai, age 32. And I also guess he has some sort of an issue with people mispronouncing his name. And he says, got that? Rai, not Ray. My occupation is Norisuke's personal fruit grower. And that sort of rhymed there. And he says, I don't do business with anyone else. So the plant appraiser is Norisuke's personal fruit grower. We already knew that. And it's interesting to see that he only works for Norisuke. Must be paying him a pretty penny there. And also, yeah, name. I'm just going to refer to him as Rai. Nothing crazy. I might still refer to him as the plant appraiser because his name wasn't really anything interesting. I guess Rai is pretty simple, but I just like calling him the plant appraiser. And it's also a little note from the translators that Rai is sometimes, the kanji can sometimes be read as Ray. That's why it's a common misconception. And also his one of his names, I assume, Mamazuku, also has the kanji for bean in it. So yeah, Bean Boy, plant appraiser, makes sense. So keep in mind, while all of this is happening, they're questioning each other. He's explaining his name and also reiterating that he is the fruit grower for Norisuke. There is this menacing, deadly stand chasing after them right now while they're in the parking lot. Like, if you just look at the way Yasuo's standing, she's just like, there's no tension at all from this. I mean, the trees look like they're so far away and they're really not gaining any advantage on them at all. So while these trees are still chasing after them, Josuke just thinks this would be a good time to maybe talk to him about the grafted branch. So he explains that then through Okakaka, you can differentiate the grafted branch from a regular branch. And we sort of see some of the things that Josuke does when he's not on panel here, and it's sort of funny. He has his phone, and he says, these are photos of the Higashikata estate. I took hundreds of photos, every nooks and cranny, all over the walleyes, and on every single branch there was around the estate, everywhere. So I just wish we got at least 2 or 3 panels of seeing Josuke just walking around the estate, taking pictures on his iPhone of every single place. And he also says, even close-up pictures, and they're like right in front. And of course, this right here was the whole reason Josuke was going to meet the plant appraiser in the first place, so he could tell him which branch it was that was grafted. So Josuke is almost begging this guy, if you just look at the pictures, I hope, but just by the pictures, you'll be able to tell which one's the grafted one. And if you can't tell, I'll leave all of you guys alone. The enemy's only coming after me, although that doesn't make sense. They do want the plant appraiser to be able to find the branch. Josuke says, after that, I'll go home. I don't want to cause any much more trouble. The enemy is only after me. Probably. Definitely not. They're after the plant appraiser. That's why they were coming after him in the first place and not so much you, Josuke. And then he says, once I go, you should be out of danger, which is not the case at all. So then he hands the plant appraiser the phone, and I love this expression that the plant appraiser puts on. He does it all the time. It's just, I've said it so much in this review, but it's just so smug. And he's just like, and like thinking like, oh, I probably won't be able to tell which one it is by this phone. But then Rai's face actually shows a different expression, and it's one of interest, and sort of his eyes light up a little bit, and Josuke gets this glimmer of hope in his eyes, and then the plant appraiser just glances over at him, and he says, good news, the Rokakaka branch is intact, and I know which one it is. So you can take this at face value and say, okay, the plant appraiser, he's very good at recognizing, different branches and everything because his life is plants, and he found the Rokakaka, or the grafted branch, that easily just by swiping through a few pictures, and he found it. Or he could be lying just for Josuke to protect him, because honestly, if he just looked at all these and said, I have no idea which one it is. There's no way I can tell by pictures. And although the plant appraiser could say something like, maybe if I was there in person, I'd be able to tell. But I feel like it would be better for him for Josuke to have a lot of faith in him. Because maybe if he was like, yeah, I have no idea which one it is, Josuke maybe wouldn't care so much about him and not want to protect him as much. Although, of course, maybe if he was on the estate in person, he'll be able to find it. But either way, I think I'm just going to take this at face value and say that just by looking at a few pictures, the plant appraiser, he found the grafted branch. I have faith in his abilities. But the plant appraiser also explains that it won't be that simple to just go and find that Rokakaka branch because, of course, they're being pursued by a lot of enemies right now and a lot of dangerous enemies. And also, it's sort of the mystery of these enemies that's so frightening about them and so dangerous. How he says, I don't know who the enemy is. I don't know what sort of rock human they are or even if they are. But what he does know for a fact is that they absolutely cannot find this branch. The plant appraiser is almost saying that he's worried about them even going to the estate in general because even if they grabbed all of the branches and then did DNA testing on them to try to find out which one is different, that will cause the branch to wilt and in turn, I suppose, die and not be able to be used to grow a new Rokakaka. He says that word a lot. He says, if they tried to grow more of them, it will wilt. If they do DNA testing on the branch, it will wilt. And also that they have to find it before winter because the tree, obviously the branch will wilt and it won't be able to survive the winter. So they're sort of on a time limit here, racing against the season as well as these enemies. And then he also states that Higashikata Jobin cannot find the branch either. So it's almost very apparent that Jobin was working not so much for this greater organization. Maybe Jobin knows about them, but more so Jobin was just working for himself with Dolomiti because Jobin thought he was sort of a lone warrior trying to get this branch. That's why he contacted Dolomiti, one of his only remaining friends, I suppose. So Jobin very much could maybe know myths and fables about this big overarching organization, or he has absolutely no idea. But right now we're working against three things: the season's organization and Jobin. And just when you think the plant appraiser and Josuke are forming a team relationship and sort of maybe could becoming friends, he just comes out of nowhere and says, if you didn't have Norisuke's backing, I wouldn't be working with you either. The only reason I'm with you right now is because of Norisuke. I really don't care about you at all. And then he just walks away. And then Josuke has sort of this pouty face where it says, I'm sorry. And I guess I can understand Josuke, he probably does feel bad. He dragged this guy into this situation. This guy doesn't want to be in this situation. For that, he resents Josuke for it. And he walked away all mad, and Josuke's just like, fuck. Damn it. I'm so sorry. So then as the plant appraiser walks off, he says, first things first, don't step in the soil around here. We're going to take a chairlift. Obviously, I'm sure they already knew that. But now we're getting onto the part of the chapter that absolutely no one saw coming. And I also want to mention how Josuke and Yasuo have the same exact shoes. It looks like Yasuo or Josuke, or it looks like Josuke has a little bit more of a high top shoe, but they're still almost identical. So couples with matching shoes. And then they actually get onto the chairlift and begin to move forward, and Yasuo begins questioning things for good reason, obviously, saying, so what about the safe place? What exactly is on top of the mountain? And the plant appraiser's just like, shh. And he says, first things first. He seems to say that a lot. I guess that's one of his character quirks. He doesn't tell them exactly what's up there, but he just says it's safer up there. And since I met up with you guys and we're going up here, our chances of survival have increased to 20%. But honestly, Where's the 80% chance of death when this tree is just coming at you in a parking lot extremely slow? And also, I just jogged my memory. I forgot to mention, way back when the plant appraiser walked away from the situation, when Josuke was like, oh, I'm sorry, I feel like I got you into this whole situation, the plant appraiser walked away. It appears that the trees react to other people's movement. So they were standing in that parking lot for quite a while just talking about things, and the tree never seemed to advance to them at all. But then as soon as the plant appraiser walks away, we get another panel at the tree that says crack, crack, crack as the sound effects, and it starts coming forward. So it looks like from that panel alone, if I was trying to nail down what the stand's ability might be with little information that we have, it looks like that the tree can only move when its target is moving, or the speed of the trees begin to increase when it moves, or that's not the case at all, and the trees are just still moving extremely, extremely slow. I just wanted to mention that real quick. So back onto the chairlift is the thing that no one saw coming at all, and it is alternate universe Superfly. As the plant appraiser gets off the chairlift and starts climbing on one of the rails and lowers down his own personal kitchen. Absolutely incredible. I didn't see this coming. I don't know anyone who did. I didn't think Superfly was going to appear in any way, shape, or form in the alternate universe. And some people were like, oh, what about Le Fay, that French naming stand? That was sort of like a location-based stand. Maybe that was alternate universe Superfly, but not really. But now we have full-on alternate universe Superfly, and I guess that makes the plant appraiser alternate universe Kanedaichi. Just really weird stuff here, man. And yeah, let me know how you guys like alternate universe Superfly. Instead of a telephone tower, it is now a chairlift. I was just so excited when this first happened because you guys know Superfly is one of my favorite stands. And now that we have an alternate universe version of it, of course, it's not a stand. It's just an area that sort of works in the same way. It's just fucking awesome, especially the plant appraiser to be living up here. It's great shit. So while they're stopped here and he opens up his personal kitchen, he gets some cushionings for Yasuo and Josuke to sit on. Also a blanket for them because it's kind of cold out. Or at least it's cold at that elevation. That sort of explains its outfit, how he's wearing a winter hat and he's sort of in a full bodysuit. It's probably cold when you're up that high, especially even when it's the summer. And we see him put an apron on. He starts getting tea out for everyone. And it's just this weird panel that just came out of this railing on the chair, on the ski lift tower. It's like a gondola. So pretty much just the rest of this chapter is the plant appraiser cooking Josuke and Yasuo Romanoff, and it's not really that interesting, although unless you're interested in cooking. I mean, the things that and the dialogue spoken by the plant appraiser is pretty much just the ingredients and the steps taken to make Romanoff and also meringue and some other pastry treats. But although the dialogue isn't very important, just the way it's spoken and the way it comes off, and also just listening to the plant appraiser talk while he does something, you get a pretty good look at his character and the way that he is. Be it the facial expressions and body motions he shows, or just his mannerisms. So while Rai is just going in great detail about cooking, how this can be used with a tiramisu, you mix the egg whites and you just whisk them very well to make meringue with a little bit of sugar, and this will work great with Romanoff, and he just is talking in a lot of detail about this cooking, and Josuke and Yasuo are just blown away, like, no way, you have to be messing with us. And they just straight up ask, do you live here? Why is there a kitchen up here? They say in midair on this chairlift, the safe place you were talking about, was that here? And then it's confirmed that the plant appraiser does in fact live in the ski lift, and that's as alternate Superfly as you're gonna get. He says that he goes to a villa during the winter when it snows here because this place becomes a ski resort and customers show up. But other than that, during the summer when no one's using the ski lift, that's where he lives. And then he quickly changes the subject from him living in a ski resort, or at least on a ski resort lift, back to the new Rokakaka. And he sort of just says, once we get back to the estate, the Higashikata estate, what do you want to do with those Rokakakas? I assume you would like to harvest them. And then he sort of states the obvious, saying that if we can't harvest the Rokakaka fruit, then there's really no point. But he also says that, the only way of doing that is here in this mountain. So, of course, he also explains that this mountain is his own personal orchard where he just grows all of his fruit, and it's very convenient to live in this ski resort chair tower when his orchard is right below him. But it's worthy to take note of that he stated that the Rokakaka fruits can only be harvested in this area. And now on for the final panels of this chapter, it is revealed that the plant appraiser is of course a stand user, and his stand is very close to what I predicted it in my discussion video about him. He says, hold on, this will only take 5 seconds. And he just reaches down, and the way his stand works is very interesting, as it looks like it's an integrated stand, how it sort of manipulates his body in a way, and it just looks like pulses, almost like it's a string wrapped around his body, and it reaches all the way down to the ground from all the way up in this chair tower, and it grows a little strawberry out of the ground. So there's actually quite a bit to talk about when it comes to this stand. First of all, its design. It's pretty damn cool looking, very much so not really a punch go stand or any humanoid stand really, although it does look like it has a humanoid neck and it's wearing sort of a suit, t-shirt sort of thing. Really weird stand design, especially on its head. It's just... It's fucking weird. The kanji on its back is most resemblance to the bean kanji, although it's not exactly, but I'm just going to assume that that's the bean kanji. And also the, I don't even know what to describe them, sort of the things coming, things protruding out of its face are also protruding out of its legs, worthy to take note of, I guess. Arms are made out of a bunch of sticks. It looks like more mechanical, though, just like various metal wires maybe connected to its arms, or they're just strands just dangling. But regardless, its design is fine. I mean, it fits the Plant Appraiser quite well. Not my favorite stand design ever, but it looks good. Also, it has bean pods on its ear. And it also reminds me about the Plant Appraiser's shoes I wanted to mention. Even his shoes had little bean pods on the side, and I thought that was just funny. And so yeah, then he explains that the entire mountain is my orchard and I live directly above it. It's very convenient for doing my job. And he says, so Romanoff, it tastes better with the strawberry on top, don't you think? But with the stand ability. So since it is his orchard below, I'm curious if his stand ability is to just straight up grow fruit or if it's able to enhance and exponentially speed up the growing process. So maybe there was already a strawberry seed in the ground and he just used his ability to speed it up in some way. But I'm sure in time and probably the next chapter we'll get a good explanation for his stand ability, because it looks like the next chapter is going to be even more talking. He says the enemy is coming from down below. If you want, while you're making yourselves at home, we can discuss our plan on what to do next. So it looks like they're just going to be hanging out up inside this chair tower for a while and discuss their next move. And I'm sure they're going to want to know about his stand ability. As the final panel of this chapter is Josuke and Yasuo in shock saying, that stand just now, Nani, and that's it. To be continued. Nothing else for the chapter. Plant Appraiser stand. A lot of stuff happened in this chapter, actually. Pretty much just an introduction to the Plant Appraiser as a character, a look at his stand ability, as well as setting up the next arc, which I am praying it's not another chase arc. Please, just, I don't want to run away from trees. We were just running away from zombies, and you couldn't even make that very interesting or rocky. Just, trees... I don't know. We're going to see how this next chapter, or the next couple chapters go. Next chapter title, it probably will be Plant Appraiser Part 3. If not, it's going to be the beginning of this enemy stand, whatever the name of it's going to be. But I assume Plant Appraiser Part 3, because the ending of the chapter is set up sort of we're just going to be doing more talking and discussing in the next chapter. So this doesn't seem like that big of a deal or that out of order, because we just had the Blue Hawaii arc, which in most people's minds, and myself too, was sort of a high intense arc. And now this is sort of, the calm before the storm. And then we're going to build up to the next stand battle and then that. So we're sort of in a resting period now, although Blue Hawaii seemed like a rest period for some people as it was kind of boring. But anyways, that was chapter 65. I'm probably forgetting a few things, but that's fine. We can discuss them in the next chapter. So yeah, JoJolion chapter 65, Plant Appraiser Part 2. Thank you all for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed, or if I fought your boredom. And of course, subscribe for more videos. Thank you all for watching.
September, love was changing.